Let me put into context here. Jesus, just a verse before, Jesus had said, when they bring you before synagogues, rulers, and authorities, do not worry about how you will prepare your defense or what you will say. Right? That's what Jesus was talking about. When suddenly, out of the blue, one of his listeners shout out to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother how to divide the family's inheritance with me." Someone wasn't listening. Someone's mind was way out in left field. Someone was worried about money. Jesus' story of the rich and foolish farmer was therefore framed by two commandments: do not worry. Just before the farmer, right, he told his listeners not to worry about what they should say and what they should do if brought to trial for his name's sake. And then at the end of the story, he tells them, do not worry about your life, what you should eat, what you should drink, or worry about your body and what you should wear. Two great commandments of do not worry. So in between, he tells the story of the farmer and the foolish and rich farmer, and that you should not worry what we worry about most: money. We can empathize with Jesus' anonymous listener because we live in a very prosperous country, and the economy of our company is, well, most of the time, is robust. But we probably worry about money at least some of the time, if not a lot of the time. But we probably worry about money more than most anything else. Some time ago, a public television broadcast a program entitled Affluenza. And the point of the program was simple. The more money we make, the more we want, and the more we spend, and that our wants always surpass our income. So when Jesus' listener asked him to command his brother to divide his inheritance, Jesus responded, "Take care. Be on guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Now, human beings, the Bible tells us, are greedy. Now, older translations use the word covetous instead of greedy, but they're two different types of things. Greed is wanting more than we need. Covetous is looking at someone else and wishing that we had what they have. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a nice car and a house and clothes, but there is something very wrong when we feel incomplete, when we don't have these things we'd like to have. Yet our economy is based largely on such a thing, creating in us a desire for things when we don't really need them. Advertisers base their appeals on these insecurities. Drink this kind of soft drink. Use this deodorant. Buy this car. You will be happy. You'll be attractive. You'll be fulfilled. In 1931, Alabama's Bishop William George McDowell said that the cause of the Great Depression was general extravagance in the recent era of so-called prosperity. And this is an actual economic term for presuming on God's providence. See, they thought that God willed them to be this prosperous, that God willed them to have all these things, that this was God's idea of rewarding them for being good Christians. They should have all this. And the vicious circle went something like this, that the desires were inflamed by clever advertising till we feel like we must indulge them and get the things that we want. We must delude ourselves into thinking we must have what we crave. And that the biggest lie is that we can afford them. They were prophetic words as applicable now as they were then. So many years ago, this renegade Baptist minister and all-around troublemaker, which he did good kinds of trouble, Clarence Jordan, rendered the Gospels into an idiom of the modern South, a language of the modern South. And here's a translation of today's Gospel from his book, cotton patch version of Luke and Acts. He writes, certain rich fellers from a farm produced, certain rich fellow's farm produced well. He had a meeting with himself and he said, what shall I do? I don't have room enough to store my crops. He said, here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my old barns and build some bigger ones, in which I'll store all my wheat and produce. Then I'll say to myself, self, you got enough stuff stashed away you do you a long time. Recline, dine, wine, and shine. But God said to him, you nitwit, at this very moment you goods are putting screws on your soul. All these things you've grubbed for, whom shall they really belong? That's the way it is with a man who piles stuff up for himself without having given God a thought. One reason that I like Clarence Jordan's translation of the story of the rich but foolish farmer, other than I get to pull out my little southern accent, is that alone among the translations of the New Testament in my library, Jordan actually translates the story correctly. In the New Revised Standard Version, this very night of your life is being demanded to you, is what it says in the NRSV, is not exactly what the Greek says. Rather, it says, they have demanded your life, right? That's what the Greek is. They have demanded your life. So who are they who demanded the life from the farmer? Well, it's his things, of course, right? He no longer owned his possessions. They owned him. Or in Jordan's words, your goods are putting screws on your soul. Somewhere deep inside, we all know that what Jesus was stating a powerful truth. Everything we own owns a little bit of us. If we own a house or a car, we are then under obligation to earn money to pay for that house or car. We have to take time to see that our house or car is cared for, so we're no longer as free as we were. The rich farmer made the mistake of believing that he really possessed his great wealth, although Jesus said that the reality is that it possessed him. There's a movie magnate, Sam Goldwyn. On being told that he couldn't take his wealth with him, replied, well, then I just won't go. But, of course, that's not an option. We can't take it with us, nor can we refuse to go when it's our time. You see, we cannot really possess our things. We can only hold them in trust. Today's possession become tomorrow's garage sale treasures. So Jesus concluded his parable of the rich farmer by saying, so it is with those who store up treasures for themselves but are not rich towards God. He had stored up his wealth in earthly barns, even though he had the opportunity to store some in heaven. Now, I want to reiterate this. Wealth is not wrong. It's not sinful, but it can be problematic. Spiritual problem of wealth is it anchors our hearts too firmly in this world rather than God's kingdom. The rich and foolish farmer tore down his barn to build bigger barns, and he opened more bank accounts. He invested in money in high-tech startups, and there's nothing wrong with that. But God invites us to invest our money and ourselves in the kingdom of heaven. The story told at the funeral of a fabulously wealthy Aristotle Onassis. One of the mourners turned to the other and said, how much did he leave? His friend replied, everything. He left everything. Amen.